Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. You just watched the mighty Niarco winning the Grand Prix de Paris in 1938 at Longchamp. Niarco was bred and owned by Senatore Federico Incisa, Senatore Federico Tesio and Marchese Mario Incisa della Rocchetta under the banner of Razza d'Ormello Giatta. Nearco, unbeaten, went to stud, and with his progeny, he completely changed the world of the modern thoroughbred. You should bear in mind that nowadays, everywhere in the world, there is a race. I'm talking about thoroughbred. Now, over 90% of those horses running, they carry Nearco's blood, which is a phenomenal agreement, in my opinion. Today, we have, for this program, we have on stage a very special person, a person who is very high in my ranking of people involved in the horse racing business. Sir Mark Prescott, connected from Newmarket. Sir Mark, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me on it. I'm delighted and honoured to be following Nearco.
Ah, that's great. I have to say that if you remember, just to tell some story that might interest the watchers, when you won the Arc de Triomphe with Alpinista, after a few days, you were in Newmarket at the sales, yearly sales. And I did you an interview using a telephone for my articles, which I write in Italy on a blog. And then I said, Sir Mark, you and I are the only people at the stage who wears a tie. And then it's true. And today is the same. You're wearing a tie, I am wearing a tie. And I told you, in my opinion, a real gentleman has to follow two principles, if you wish. A real gentleman must wear a tie all the time, and the real gentleman doesn't run ever. And you added a third principle, saying that your father, many years ago, told you that if somebody in the middle of the road is waving at you, you don't have to pay attention. So I say, Mark, are you follow these two principles? And he say, yes, but not the third one. Do you remember that?
I do. And Father had lots of good things. One I followed on was he said, never late and never wait. And he never waited for anybody. Yeah.
Exactly. But first of all, you don't have late ever. You don't have to be late ever, because otherwise. Anyway,
he never waited, and he famously took us all away on holiday over a weekend, and Mother was late, and the car was full up with 3 children and a dog and everything, and Mother was late, so he drove off, and we came back 4 days later. There were no mobile phones, and she was so cross that she never asked where we had been, and we never told her.
That's very funny. Anyway, how come that you got involved in this business?
I was born in Devon on a farm, and I suppose there was a pretty girl who rode down the village, and I thought it'd be a good idea if I learned to ride, and I was taught by a lovely woman who loved racing, and she because I helped out all the time and I enjoyed it so much, she wouldn't take any money for my riding lessons, and so my stepfather took her to Newton Abbot races, and I went with her, and there was a fall at the last fence. We were right by the last fence, and this horse came in tremendous gallop. I was too small to see over the fence, and it crashed to the ground in front of me, and it brought down 2 more, and they all lay motionless, and then bit by bit one horse got up and then another, but the first jockey just lay there motionless, and I was 9 or 10, and I thought obviously he's dead, And he got up very, very slowly, and he chucked his whip into the crowd, and he said, "Fucking hell," and walked back up the track. And I thought, what a man. And I never wanted to do anything else ever again.
I see.
And his name was Tim Brookshaw, and he became champion jockey. And when I broke my back badly, and I went to hospital for a long time, Oswestry Orthopedic, he was there and in a wheelchair. And I remember saying to him, it's because of you, because you were my hero, that I'm here as well. Yeah.
And then growing, you decided to become a trainer?
Yes, well, I was a bad jockey, and I after this injury, somebody very kindly, Jack Leach, who you may remember, wrote for the Observer newspaper. Jack Leach came to stay with my parents, came back to Newmarket, and met Jack Waugh on the Heath. Jack Waugh was a famous trainer who trained at Heath House, and he met Jack Waugh. And Mr. Waugh said, "I don't feel so good. I could do with an assistant trainer." And Jack Leach said, "I saw just the man yesterday." So just luck, just luck.
And then you started many years ago. And now I have to say that you are the dean of them all, because now Sir Michael Stout announced that he will call it a day at the end of the year. So you will be the last living legend still active in the racing world. This is true.
Well, I don't know about that, but I said I saw Sir Michael the next day after it was in the paper, and I said, "You've left me feeling very exposed now, very exposed." Yeah.
Of course, because as I said before, you are the dean of them all. It's a
Well,
matter of age. Unfortunately, we cannot go against the age. This is,
no,
I mean, so
no.
far we can't. They have invented the artificial intelligence or something, but there is nothing we can do against the age. Anyway, I know that few months ago you have been quite active because of this affordability check that at the moment there is in the UK. But before talking about this subject, I want to have your opinion about the fixture problem, because in my opinion, you have too many races. So some Saturday you have Chester, Sundown, York, and maybe Newmarket all together. And then, there's too many races, in my opinion. What is your idea of this problem?
Well, as you rightly say, you water down the program, don't you? From the point of view of being a professional trainer, I'm very grateful to have more opportunities to win races for my owners. But from the point of view of producing the product, too many race meetings definitely does water it down. It also means that the daily press don't now publish all the cards. Premier Racing was supposed to deal with it, but seems to have only been a partial success, whereby during the feature time of the day, there were just 2 or 3 fixtures. It seemed to be quite a good idea. Maybe it wasn't quite heavily promoted enough, but it doesn't seem to have caught on, the premierisation, which really would, in some countries, be called tiered racing.
Yes. Now, if you don't mind, we have a short break. Don't go away. Stay with us. I think that you probably read what happened the other day in the United States. That it was a long article on the TDN saying that they discovered that there was a guy, a doctor in the lab of the University of Kentucky, that he used to receive all the samples, and when the samples were positive, he threw them away, making them negative. And now, but the University of Kentucky, uh, you know, issued some bills for all these tests. And now the University of Kentucky has to give over $1 million back because all these samples were, thrown away. I think that this is something unbelievable. And I haven't read anything of any English newspaper, Racing Post included.
No, I until you told me, I hadn't heard of it. Until you told me, I hadn't heard of it. But there were some changes in the findings in Britain, which were remedied probably by changing the venue where samples were sent. Obviously this does have a bearing, but I had no knowledge of what you've said until just now, so I really can't comment anymore. But I can't say I'm completely staggered. In greyhound racing and coursing, which is my love, they've always had terrible problems with trying to help dogs recover for finals, and famous examples of dogs who disappeared into the back of a van and had to be carried into the back of a van and then have exploded out 30 minutes later to win the final. So the game has always been rife with these sort of things, and if that happened, of course, it's a major worry. But I hadn't heard of it until you told me.
Anyway, you mentioned course. And I have a friend that is Harry Findlay, that he won the Derby and the Oaks in Ireland. Because can you explain in a few words what course is?
Coursing it's the pursuit of a hare by two greyhounds, the winner of which is decided by points, and the hare, contrary to popular opinion, nowadays in park coursing in Ireland, is virtually never ever killed. And Harry had wonderful dog. Big Fella Thanks was a great big black and white dog, and he parred up the hill at Clonmel, and nobody has ever shouted louder than Harry. And it added enormously to the atmosphere. He came, I remember Harry coming over, and he'd never been coursing, and he just loved it, and he lit up the place. And we sadly miss that he doesn't come more often. But I think of course he had Denman, but Harry used to say, I don't know whether he still does, that Big Fella Thanks was a bigger thrill than the mighty Denman. And I'm a coursing man through and through too. Yeah.
Yes, he told that to me also. He was very, very fond of Big Fella Thanks. I saw him because I went to his house when he used to live outside Bath, and Big Fella Thanks was there.
That's right. Was lying by the fire.
Now Harry Findlay is involved in that greyhound course in Ireland, Lifford, close to the border of Northern Ireland, because he invented. He said that he placed a tote system with 10% takeout for every kind of bet. But anyway, apart from coursing, many years ago, I remember one day, I haven't met you before, I came to your yard with a friend of mine, Martin Pierce. He used to work for the International Racing Bureau many, many years. He was one of the few people in Newmarket. I was working for the IRB in Italy. Alan Cooper, now the Niarchos boss, if you wish, was working in Ireland, and Desmond Stoneham in France. So Martin Pierce had a share in a horse that you were training. He took me to
Yes.
your yard. And I remember that all around the courtyard, there were cocks, fighting
Yes.
cocks,
In my
because
misspent youth,
breeding.
in my misspent youth, and they all used to be on tethers in the around the yard. These marvelous birds, and in the morning, about 28 or 30 of them would all start crowing, and the hotel next to me. It shows what wonderful, wonderful neighbours they are. There was never a word of complaint, and all these birds used to start up in the morning. And finally, I got rid of the birds, and then, of course, for the horses, I bought a treadmill. So now the treadmill's thundering away at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they still never complain. So you couldn't have better neighbours ever. Yeah.
Anyway, and then I know that you like bullfighting also.
Yes. I go 4 weekends a year to the corridas. Go to France probably 3 or 4 times, and once to Spain. And it's a marvelous weekend. It's a complete break, and with different friends to both to the different ferries. And I'm absolutely. I've always been fascinated. I went first to Pamplona, like everybody does, when I was 16, and I took my first girlfriend, of course, and I felt that for the first time I was alive. You know, a girlfriend, 30,000 people singing the Pamplona song, 6 bulls waiting to thunder up the street. I remember thinking, you know, for the first time I'm alive, and all those people at school who told you that school was the best days of their lives, they must have had very boring lives. And so
And
I got very interested, and I went 2 or 3 years, and then when I started training, obviously I couldn't afford to go, but I kept the magazines and kept reading, and when things got better, I make it a regular trip to go to the bulls. Yeah.
but I have a secret about you. Well, no, it's not a secret anyway, just a joke. I know that when you go to France, you go to a special restaurant, and then you told me once that you go there, the food is so and so, but the île flottant is out of this world.
The best, the best. Eel flotant. I would have my dying meal in the restaurant. Sadly, the elderly couple who ran it, I think COVID finished it, but it was in Serres, which is on the border between Spain and France, and the meal was always the same: gazpacho, steak tartare, eel flotant, and a sangria that if you could walk down the stairs afterwards, you were a better man than me. It was just a wonderful place, but I'm afraid it's now gone, so I don't have to guard the secret anymore.
In my life, I have to say that I attended the Goyesca in
Yes,
Rome. I went there, I think 3 years ago, and now the arena is closed because they are refurbishing it, and it
that's
was
right.
a sensational spectacle. I have to say. Have you been to the Goyesca?
Oh yes, I've been to Ronda, where normally the ambiance is marvelous. It's owned by the Ordonez brothers who manage it, and the classical atmosphere is tremendous. The corridas are perhaps of less standing, but the atmosphere, and it's a wonderful place. That bridge and the museum, and hopefully it'll be open again. But I've not been for a long, long time. But it's a great advertisement for the bullfight,
Yes,
and you know, the bullfight, I think, is complicated for an Anglo-Saxon to understand, but the main point, I think, is that that the bull will not survive the day any more than he will survive the abattoir. But he's lived for 4.5 marvelous years, unmolested by man, the most wonderful life, really, of any bovine could possibly have. And when the day comes, the day comes. But if I was a bull, I'd rather be born in Seville than I would be in Shepherd's Market, London. You know, I think, I think, I think there's, and the other thing I think is that the Italian and the British people speak quite rightly, very, very importantly, on the fact that the animal should have a sporting chance, and that is not so in the corrida. The bull will die, but the corrida.
Hello? Oh my God, the line is gone.
The bullfight in Spain, it's cultura.
Yes, yes, I agree. Anyway, going back to racing, I have to say that you won a huge number of Group Ones, and probably Alpinista was the pinnacle of your career. Is that right? Can you hear me?
I hope you can hear. But Alpinista was absolutely the great day. If I could have everybody, the old question, if you could have 10 minutes of your life again, I would have, I suppose, the first winner I ever rode, and I'd probably have Alpinista and the marvelous reception she had, and Miss Rousing and Morris, and getting kissed by Jean-Claude Rouget, something I'd never bargained for before. And then getting kissed by Andre Fabre. I'm told that was even more of a triumph. So it was a special day.
But I remember that you told me that the day before the Arc, you have spoken to Alain Desroyers-Dupré,
Yes.
asking him, I don't know, about the tactics or something like that.
Yes, I had a long session with Alain, who was most helpful. And Luke Morris, he chose to speak to Johnny Murtagh. And both Alain and Johnny Murtagh gave us exactly the same advice. And we were both very grateful to both of them. But you probably heard the story, but Luke Morris, on the way back in the taxi, I said, how did that feel, Luke, then? And he said, well, before the Arc de Triomphe, he said, on the Friday, I watched 14 Arc de Triomphes. And on the Saturday in the evening, I got back from Wolverhampton races late, and I watched another 14. And as I turned into the straight today at Longchamp, I realized I was going better than any of the 28 that I'd watched on television.
Anyway,
it's rather a lovely story.
Oh yes, it's a lovely story. I have a final question for you. Looking at the results that every year you have, which are pretty good, I have to say that in a certain way, you are a specialist for handicaps. Is that correct? I mean, you know
Yes,
how to handle horses for handicaps.
I think, you know, in the whole system, handicapping or even going through the system group races and listed races and group races, the only horses that can win races are improving horses. Once you can't improve, you can't win. It's pretty simple, because you've got the penalty system to defy. So, yes, you know, handicaps in England play a very important part, and we're very lucky. This day you're interviewing me. At the moment, we are the second leading percentage trainer in Britain.
Yes,
Mr. Appleby being the leading trainer. But we would run every horse that we've got. And to do that, you've got to exploit every possible loophole, really, every possible nook and cranny, to give this horse the best chance he's got to win. And I always say that I think a trainer, his job to a degree with most horses, with the normal horse, is rather like your accountant. You shouldn't pay more tax than absolutely necessary. But if the accountant gets you into prison, he hasn't done his job properly. And your horse as an owner shouldn't carry more weight than is absolutely necessary. But the trainer shouldn't get himself and everybody else into prison either. So there's this delicate balance between using the system, letting the horses come through the system. That has always been a problem which is all trainers have to deal with in some way or another, because it forms the basis of the racing system in England, if not in America.
Yes, Sir Mark, I wish to thank you very much for your time. I think that it was a great conversation, because we talk about subjects or stories that I think that very few people have the chance of hearing in the past. Once again, thank you very much. I'll be seeing you next week in Newmarket. Have a good day.
And I look forward to seeing you very much. Take care.
Thank you very much.